Ladies and gentlemen, Inspired Empire.
Hey, what are you talking about?
How did you ever think about my problems?
Just low.
I was winning! God, what did you...
And there's no answer that comes feasibly pleasing me.
We got officers running here, back eastbound, chasing, now we're on foot.
Nothing for this boy and for the millions of others.
Did he cross the line from sexual harassment to sexual assault?
Trying to make me rack into it.
All right? Don't you get angry, man.
These are the fighters ISIS is preparing to be stone-cold killers.
I just don't know what to do anymore.
cannot help but dance every time that comes up. It has become my meditation. I hope you enjoyed it. Welcome to tonight. I can't explain how excited I am to be here right now because this has been such a long time coming. I literally feel like I've been pregnant for 2 years. I just gave birth. You're all my babies. Welcome to the world. Actually, it's Welcome to the World Inspired Empire, which I'm really excited about. So there's so many things I have to say, but I want to start out by saying that tonight I'm going to tell you 2 important things. First, if you're here, your shift begins now. And 2, what you want to feel is real. What you want to feel is real. And I know some of you are thinking, how does she even know what I want to feel? Who is she, by the way? So I'm going to take this moment to introduce myself. My name is Monica Verma. I am, thank you, I'll take that. That doesn't happen often. I am the co-founder of Inspired Empire, and I am so excited to welcome all of you in the room here tonight with us. Your energy is making my energy just go crazy, so I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to say hello to everyone who is streaming in live tonight from who knows where, whether you're in the comfort of your own home or sitting at a desk somewhere. Just excited that you tuned in, and to any family that has tuned in. Thank you so much for joining us. We are coming to you live from New York City for the Inspired Empire Live Reveal. So, before I tell you more about Inspired Empire, I want to talk about the 2 videos that we just watched. So there's a bit of a contrast to those videos. Would you guys agree? Yes. So the first one is something that I feel like we can all relate to. Sort of the status quo right now when we think about our social world. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of negativity, and it's hard when you go out there to feel good, right? The second video is something that I think many of us want to relate to. There's a sense of hope, there's a sense of potential calm, there's a sense of curiosity. What is this? There's a sense of wanting to feel good in it. And I think a lot of people are finally waking up to the idea that feeling good matters, that feelings actually matter. So we live in a world that values doing more than feeling. In fact, some of us actually condemn emotions altogether, thinking that life is easier without feeling, until you try to suppress it enough that it causes a lot of pain. So we understand the pain and the drain of trying to live a life with suppressed emotions. We try to portray something on the outside, and we live something very, very different on the inside. You guys can relate to some of that? Yes. So I think people are starting to understand that my feelings matter, and I want to feel better, but they don't know how. Because I think we have an idea that we try to do what other people do to make ourselves feel good. And so there's this sort of exploration that happens when people start to seek. And they're doing it, but it's not working. And then the question is why? Why doesn't it work? And our premise for Inspired Empire is because you're looking in the wrong place. The place where that hides is on the inside. The second video represents an awakening. It's essentially a stream of consciousness of somebody who is going through that inner battle within themselves, trying to get that sense of feeling good and holding on to it. But it's difficult, and you can see the inner conflict that happens there. But as long as that battle continues on the inside, you're going to see the battle continue on the outside. Because I believe, and what I've come to understand from my own inner journey, is that the social conflict that we're seeing today is really just a projection of many, many people living with inner conflict. And until we get to the root cause of the social conflict, which hides inside every individual person, we're not going to be able to solve the problem that so many of us are trying to tackle today. So in order to understand where the solution is, you might want to understand what is an awakening. Kind of a word that is difficult to define. I think people have many very different interpretations of what this is. So I'm going to try to define for you how I interpret an awakening and try to relate it to something that you may be able to feel. So I want you to take a minute and imagine what it feels like to be thirsty. Really, really dehydrated, thirsty. Mouth is kind of sticky, fingers are a little pruny, haven't relieved that dehydration in a while. You're getting a little irritated, it's uncomfortable. Before an awakening, it's like you're living most of your life in that state, thirsty. The problem is you don't even know what thirst is. You don't even know how to describe what you're feeling. And then you're looking for relief. You're trying to find a solution. You want to soothe this feeling. It's so uncomfortable. You don't even know what water is. So you have a problem that you cannot articulate, and you have a solution that you don't know how to even articulate that or where to find it. But you do know that every once in a while the thirst is relieved. You know that there are times where you feel the feeling of water on the inside of you, even though you don't know what that is. And then one day you meet a very wise person, so wise. And they say to you, that feeling that you have, that's because you have water. And they explain to you what water is, and then they say to you, well, where can I get more? Because I've tasted and I want more of that. You're like, well, it's easy. It's on the inside of you. You have a never-ending supply of this. There is a well that exists there. And this person gets really frustrated. You're getting really frustrated with the idea that water exists, it's inside of me. Why can't I relieve the thirst? Then this wise person says to you, well, there's a really long hose that connects the well, where all the water is, to the spout where it comes out, where the relief happens. And if it's all tangled up inside, you're not going to be able to get any of the water out. And so you're thinking to yourself, well, what is that hose? Because mine must be tangled. And they say it's your understanding of life. It's your understanding of you. It's your understanding of you in your life. And you realize that you want to be able to do something because there's relief on the other end of it, but you don't know what it is, how you're going to get there, but you do know that you want it. And that's the beginning of an awakening. When you understand that the solution is on the inside, and that you now actually want to go in there and try to find it. Once people start to understand this idea, what happens is they recognize how much they've been focusing on the outside of their life and how much they've been avoiding what's on the inside. It's really uncomfortable to have a twisted hose inside of you, right? We all know the life of two faces, two realities, living one on the inside, living one on the outside. We probably all can relate to at least one person in our life who lives this at an extreme level, right? Let's just say there's that guy that you know that puts on a big chest, has a lot of confidence, seems like they have no fear at all, and they're checking off all the boxes of success, and they want to make you feel envious, and they want to make you feel like they have what you don't have. I mean, just go to Facebook for 5 minutes and you see the highlight reel of pretty much anybody trying to put out their story out there in that way. But we also know that inside that person, the reality doesn't always match the outside. That a lot of times, the higher up someone goes on a ladder, the more fear they have on the inside. The more they worry that this isn't enough. The more they worry that this can be taken away. The more they worry that if it's taken away, who am I? I want to tell you a story, well, two, actually, about myself, because I understand this reality very well. The first one is pretty much that. So in my 20s and my 30s, I was living a pretty ego-driven, image-conscious, anxious-filled life. I should just say I was thirsty as hell. And I didn't recognize how much I was avoiding what was building on the inside. But it turns out you can only avoid it so much before things really start to hurt. And you can only avoid it so much before you start to feel split apart inside. On the outside, looking in, I was doing pretty good. I had gotten my PhD, higher education check, even went to Harvard for a postdoc. I was living with a great career, great income, married for 10 years, 3 beautiful kids. I looked great. On paper, life was great. On the inside, I couldn't have felt more disconnected from what was happening. And that was when I realized that my disconnect from myself was starting to impact my disconnect from my own children. That if I couldn't connect to me because of this twisted hose inside of me, that I was never going to be able to do for my kids what wasn't done for me. So I made the decision, my first major decision to make a change, and that was ending my marriage of 10 years, so that I could bring some hope to myself that maybe this would get me on the right path. I did not know what this was going to look like. I didn't know what it was going to look like when I decided to face the reality of how my life ended up where it ended up. That's a pretty hard thing to do, to recognize what you've done to yourself, to end up in the position that you've ended up in, where you don't feel like people are treating you the way that you want to be treated, where you don't feel loved. It's another thing to go back, way, way back to your childhood and realize there was a lot of dark stuff that came out of there too, that I now had to pay attention to because I started to go inside. There's a lot of darkness to get through before you actually get to the well. And I had made the decision that I was going to let that outer reality of mine go so that I could go inside, so I could feel like one. So even though there was darkness, at least I was one with the darkness. And I figured at some point I could actually make it back to the light. I spent a good number of years inside myself. You know, when they say that this is, what do they say? The inner battle is the hardest battle that you will ever fight. Well, people aren't lying when they say that, because I know that when you're sitting alone by yourself, examining your own life and seeing the parts of you that you don't necessarily feel good about, it's a really tough thing to do. It takes more strength and more courage to go inside than it does to battle someone on the outside. And the level of vulnerability that you have to experience in order to experience who you really are on the inside, well, that's a process, but there is the reward. So I did spend a good 4 years working on myself, starting to pay less and less attention to what was happening on the outside of me so that I could change what was happening on the inside of me. And eventually I did get to a really beautiful place where I felt good about myself, where I felt like I was connecting with my babies again, where I felt like my relationships at work were turning around, where I felt like my relationships in general had just smoothed out and things were just getting easier. I felt good. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is the end of this journey. I have figured this out. I even had a great relationship with my ex-husband, who's become a really good friend of mine and great co-parent to my kids. This was as good as I thought it was going to be, and I thought, great, I just go off and I live my life now. But I'm going to get to the second story that I want to tell you. This was about a year ago it started, last spring, where it may have seemed that once again, my inner and outer realities were a mismatch. And it started when I was in my happy place and then got a phone call about my mother. She was diagnosed with cancer and was given a few months, potentially a few weeks to live. Now, I think a lot of us can relate to the idea that the relationship we have with our parents, especially our mothers, can be a very, very difficult relationship. My mother represented the hardest relationship I've ever had. It was a difficult connection. A connection was truly never made. So when she was in the hospital and I went to see her, because I could now see myself clearly and I had tapped into my well, it was like for the first time I could see my mother as a person, not as a mother. And I could see inside of her and I saw how twisted that hose was. And I realized she had never even found her well. She didn't even understand how thirsty she was and how little amount of water she could give to her kids, who she loved so much. We couldn't feel it from her. In those few weeks in the hospital with her, before she passed, she entered what my sister and I call her special place. She had found bliss. She couldn't do anything but sit in this hospital bed, contemplate her own death, and all of a sudden the stress of her life had gone away. And I could see she was starting to be fed by her well. And I could see it because she was starting to connect with me. And for the first time, I said, "I love you" to my mother, and she said, "I love you" back in a way that I could feel it. I was 40 years old by the time that happened. And it lasted, a week and a half before she passed. As she was passing, I was sitting beside her bed. It was midnight. And I was the only one sitting next to her. And I knew it was about to happen. But she wasn't letting go. She was holding on. She was holding on. So I started talking to her because I really didn't want her to suffer. And I had felt this purpose in me growing. And I felt this feeling, this desire. Something was brewing in me, and I felt like she wanted me to say something. So I started talking to her, and I said, "I feel it. I feel it, Mom. I know I'm supposed to do something with what I've learned from this relationship and what I've learned from all my other relationships and what's happened to me in the last 4 years. I promise, whatever this feeling is, whatever it is I'm supposed to do, I will do it." And as I was speaking to her, she slowly stopped breathing, one long breath at a time. And as she was transitioning, I just kept talking, and I kept hearing my own voice, and I kept thinking, this is true. This is true. You're going to have to do this. I feel very blessed by that experience. I came back from Canada to New York, literally feeling like a different person. Now, I had spent, 4 years before that figuring out that what I wanted and what I felt on the inside was the right thing to do, and I should pursue that. When I came back after my mother's passing, I had felt it so strongly that there was no way that I could deny it. There was just this energy that was building in me, and I felt so different, and I felt like I didn't fit in my life, and I felt these desires trying to push me in another direction. And I had learned enough by that point not to resist, because that's when things get harder. So I lowered my resistance, and I trusted the process. I was trusting that my life was putting me in the right direction. So from the outside looking in, the decisions I made, I think may have made me seem a little rash, a little irresponsible. Maybe people felt sorry for me for maybe losing my mind after my mother passed. I had decided that I couldn't be in the job that I was in anymore. That career wasn't bringing me the meaning that I desired. So I quit my job. I did not have a full backup plan. I felt this vision brewing in me I was like, it's going to turn out into some sort of a business. I'll make some money. The kids and I will be fine. And then I wanted to move from Brooklyn to Manhattan, and I don't know if any of you who are not living in Manhattan know that it's a very expensive place to live. I found a beautiful apartment that I could not afford on paper. Also, I had just quit my job. And I just didn't understand how this was supposed to be my home, but I knew it was supposed to be. So my life gave me the idea of, hey, cash out your 401k, and you can actually live here. Thank you. So I did it, telling myself, these rules aren't real, these rules aren't real. It's okay to do the one thing that I think every American tells you not to do. And I proceeded to follow my desire. And I felt like, this business that I wanted to create that was all about helping people, that was all about sharing the wisdom that I had gathered up until this point, the clarity would come. But getting investors at this point really wasn't an option because I couldn't articulate what the business was. And I knew that at some point I would run out of money, but I was in my process of trusting. I wanted to trust that my life was going to take care of me, that if my life was taking me in this direction, that I was going to be okay. So that's what I did. I felt like this home was a place for me to get really clear about the next steps. And until I felt inspired about a next step, I wouldn't make any. See, the thing is, instead of feeling fear on the inside when all of this was happening, I felt something totally different. I felt like complete freedom. Complete freedom. The thing that I was scared about was telling everybody else about what I was feeling. Because people don't really understand that sense of complete freedom when it looks like your life is going in a direction that people cannot understand. So I kept that to myself. It was like a little mini secret. Things were changing around me, and I went further and further inside myself to hold on to what I felt was right for me. And sometimes you have to do that, because if anyone's going to kill your dream, it's going to be other people. So I waited inside this home for a good year. It's my year of solitude, waiting for this to be born, and also waiting for the solution of my finances to be solved by my life. And I have to say that if I wasn't in that financial situation of running out of money for rent and coming to the point where I needed money to funnel into the business, I wouldn't have had the solution that my life gave me, which was one of my longtime best friends, Jennifer Raoul, coming in to be an investor. And yes, you can do it for Jen. Yeah. My son knows Jen as the one with the money. So he's just clapping, yeah. I had no idea. I've been friends with Jen for 20 years, did not know that what I was building inside of me was something that she was going to connect to. And at first, she was just like, I love this idea of wanting to help people. I want to do that. I feel that desire. Let me just start by investing. And she was the only person that I felt comfortable enough taking money from. I still do, by the way. She bought this. It looks good, right? After she invested and we started talking about the business, she had realized, she was like, Monica, this is my vision too. I feel like I want to do this. And over a 6-month period, she moved from being an investor to being a co-creator to being a co-founder. And I honestly had no idea that that's what was waiting for me. That I'm so glad that I didn't try to make something happen financially, because I would have missed out on what Inspired Empire couldn't have been born if I didn't wait for that solution. So I just feel like part of my purpose in living this experience and many other experiences is that I want people to understand that becoming aware of your life changes the way your life shows up. If we're willing to believe that our life is great, then life will show up for you that way. See, our life is not a story. It's a living, breathing energy force that wants to connect with you, that wants to engage with you, that wants to mold to your expectation. A lot of us go through life thinking life is something that I have to get through. But in reality, what I've experienced is that life is always trying to get through to you. Every challenge is literally about life trying to get through to you, waking you up. Waking you up. And there's two sides of the coin to this. It depends on how you want to look at your life. Is it happening to you or is it happening for you? I know many of us had heard that before. But what I want to do is help people understand at a deeper level, if you think of your life as a living, breathing organism, you will start to understand that it's always talking to you. It's always giving you a message. Like, you may not notice it in the moment, but have you ever had sort of a hindsight 2020 moment where you realized something had happened where at the time you didn't really understand it? You look back, now you don't have any emotions around it, and you can see why it might have happened, what the message might have been, what it is that it was trying to say to you. It's doing that all the time, all the time. And life lines up for you. There's so many synchronicities that can happen if you're just aware of the fact that it's always working in your favor. It can't happen if you worry. It happens when you don't worry. So you have to think about the times where something just worked out, where you didn't even think about it as a problem, but it could have been a really big one, and it just was avoided. But we continue to think about life as a struggle. So life is always waiting for you to stop doing that. Because as long as you think about it as a struggle, it can only show you struggle. And life is wanting you to want something more for yourself. Life is actually wanting you to want. Your life wants you to want. And I know that sounds really strange in a world where we're told that wanting for ourselves is selfish. How many times have we heard that? It's selfish to actually follow what's on the inside of us. Think about others first, right? How many of us are programming our kids with that notion right now when we feel like they're asking for too much? I feel like we've almost demonized the idea of desire. It's a dirty word. It's a dirty word because we haven't figured out that desires that are not ego-driven have meaning. That through your desire, you discover who you are. It is true that from struggle, you learn what you're made of. This is true. But what I've discovered and what I want to let you know is the other side of the coin is that through your desire, we discover what we were made for. And it's only through that process of following what your life is trying to tell you by what's inside of you that you really get to discover who you are. And that discovery is the water. It's what you get is that sense of self, that sense of purpose, the sense of personal power, the sense of personal freedom, the things that we find hard to articulate, that the conversation around happiness, it's such a generic conversation because no one really understands how to define happiness. But what you're looking for is something that feels more like you. We're always trying to find what feels like me. And no one else can tell you what feels like you. Only you can tell you what feels like you. Because not all of us want all the money in the world. And not all of us want the cars and the big houses and the perfect relationship. Some of us just don't want to live that way. And it has to be okay to follow what it is that you want. Because these deep, innate desires that we're all born with is what makes us individual. And that's what makes life an amazing thing to experience, because desire is a life-giving, it's such a powerful life-giving energy. It has the power to change your life if you pay attention to it. And if you allow yourself to be pulled by desire instead of pushed by motivation, I'm talking about like it literally will guide you like you're flying. If you allow that to happen, that's when the divide on the inside starts to dissolve. That's when you start to feel the change. And that's when you relax into the thirst going away and saying, this feels like me. This feels like me. See, the thing is, just like people who have been fed and just like people who are not dehydrated, people who discover their desires and allow that power to come in them, they're satisfied. They're not feeling that sense of deprivation anymore. They're not feeling a sense of disempowerment. They're empowered. They feel good. That sense of inner power, not external force, two very different things, that's what they're experiencing. They're experiencing freedom. They get that so many of the rules that we live by, they're not real. That your life doesn't follow the rules that the people have made. There's a different set of rules that life is guiding us by. And you get to discover what they are when you decide to go on that adventure. And so when I got to this point of feeling this way, and I was thinking, well, what took me so long to feel this way, number one? And number two, why doesn't the rest of the world live this way? Like, why does this feel like a secret? Because that's what it felt like to me. Like, it was hard for me to describe. I didn't really talk to people about this feeling because I didn't know what to say about it. And I started to realize that the reason this becomes difficult is because it requires two things that we right now have the hardest time with. The first is feeling. We are not good at feeling our feelings. And two is trust. We're not really good at trusting our life, trusting the process, trusting ourselves, or trusting other people. It's a big one. We want to live life by calculations, right? You want to figure out, like, if I do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to get this outcome. It's very logical. It's thinking-based. If I can see it, then I can go after it. But if you can't tell me what the outcome is going to be, probably not going to do it. What I discovered is when you're living life from this other path, from the path of your desire, is that you don't know what's going to happen when you take the next step. But until you take the next step, you're kind of stuck. So it's courage before clarity, and the only way that you're going to get the courage is if you trust that your life has your back. It's the only way it works. If you don't trust, I totally get it, you're not going to do it, which is where I was for the first half of my life. And you got to feel your way to what is that first step, and you can't feel your way when you're tangled up inside. Now, I get that it's a difficult thing to process, that I should live my life differently. You don't even know maybe that you want to live your life differently. But I would say the reason that we go to the movies, the reason we go to adventure parks is for a sense of adventure, for not knowing what the feeling is going to be, but you're going for the feeling, right? And you don't always want to know in a movie what's the next scene, because you want to feel your way through it. You want to go through the ups and downs of the emotions. You want to be able to feel something different. You don't always want to know the end of the movie, so why do we always want to know the end of our experiences? It's like we've all landed on the best adventure park here on Earth, and we can see all the rides, all of them. But we go to the safest ride there is, and then just stay on it. We just stay. I think this is a Ferris wheel. Is that the safest ride? I don't know. In my mind, it's probably the safest, because I really don't like roller coasters, but. So you're on this, and you're thinking, you're watching other people go on the other rides, and you're thinking, that's not for me. I couldn't do that. Not good enough for that? No, that's way too scary. But if you imagine that the whole point of being here is actually to discover that and go through the feeling of being a little scared, having a little risk, being uncomfortable, knowing that your life has your back, it changes the way you live. And I get that right now, trust is a difficult thing to do. Really difficult thing to do. I mean, you have to go online for 5 minutes before you're like, no, I don't trust anybody. It's tough. It's tough, right? It seems bleak. It feels like there's more chaos out there than we can even deal with right now. When I first moved into this home last year, I felt compelled at first to help mothers. That's who I was connecting with at the time. That's who I related to. The more time I spent with myself and allowed the vision to evolve, the Me Too movement started happening. And I had this feeling inside of me that was saying, you might want to expand. Women. Talk to women. I didn't even know what I was going to talk about. I just knew that I had this feeling of, you need to help, be a voice. And then, as the Me Too movement and other things were happening and progressing, the story of men came up. What was happening to men in our society? All of a sudden, it was a conversation. And we were looking at powerful men really differently, and we were having a conversation we never had before. And my vision evolved again. I was saying, you can include men. And I was saying, no, I don't know. I don't think so. Work my way through the fear, accepting it. Okay, I'll think about it. That's really all I was doing. I was just mastering my own thoughts and my own emotions through the fear of thinking that at some point I was going to do something to help people. And then, of course, there's the big race divide in our country right now. And that was getting louder. And then what was happening in the news over and over and over again. School shootings after school shootings after school shootings. And I felt this voice inside of me saying, more people, more people, more people. And I was afraid, because honestly, going online, I was scared to be a voice for anything. Anybody expressing themselves right now is going to have a hard time. And I get that. So I sat with myself in silence to get past that. I feel like the chaos that is happening in our world right now, the one that I feel like I had to step into, that chaos is something that is preceding the change that is coming. It's a sign of that. It's like when you have to vomit. A lot of gross things have to happen before it comes out. A lot of gross things have to happen before it comes out. If you're my kids, it's really gross. But what happens when it comes out? It's got to come up, come up, come up, come up, and eventually it actually gets out. And there's relief. There's relief. The chaos that is happening is not a bad thing. It is something that must happen because the change that is inevitable, the change for the better, is waiting. It's waiting. We decide how long we want the chaos to continue. Albert Einstein, a genius that we all know, said, "You cannot solve problems with the same consciousness that created it." You cannot solve problems with the same consciousness that created it. What does that mean? To me, it means solution consciousness is higher. Go higher. You hear people say, transcend the chaos. For me, it's a little more simple than that. It's about focusing your attention somewhere else. See, not all problems are meant to be solved. There's not an answer on how to fix everything. Many problems require them to be dissolved. And the way something gets dissolved is simply by moving your attention from it. Because where your attention goes, energy flows. So even though you're trying to do something to fix it, it doesn't always mean that it's working in that fashion. So there's all this drama on the outside of us. And as long as we continue to focus there, we're ignoring the one thing that's actually going to make that drama start to fade away from our lives, one by one. And that is the desire that hangs out on the inside of us, right? So when we stop paying attention to other people for a little bit to actually focus on ourselves, what we're all wanting from ourselves is our own attention. Your life wants you to pay attention to you so that you can start to feel this energy force pulling you in the direction that you may not yet consciously know you want to go, but you want to go. There's I think it's from the Bible, the saying, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you," which is a beautiful message, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I think we may have gone a little extreme with this idea of be nicer to other people because you want them to be nice to you, because I think what we've forgotten about is ourselves. Also, this idea of have empathy first for other people. I find that difficult because until you have empathy for yourself, how can you possibly have empathy for someone else? And when we are told this message over and over again, we inevitably end up waiting for someone to have empathy for us and see our own pain and our own struggle, when it's our job to see our own pain and our own struggle so that we can get out of that. My message is do for yourself first. It is not selfish, because when you do for yourself first, doing for others comes so naturally. It is not hard to care about other people. It is not hard to be able to see their suffering and want to extend your hand, because you're not thirsty anymore, right? Isn't it easy to give food to people if you're fed? But what we are doing is walking around starving and people telling us to feel bad if we're not giving away the food we have. Empathy first, but yes, for yourself. It is not selfish to want to take care of you first so that you can take care of other people. When people feel satisfied, when they feel fed by their own desires, they're empowered, and empowered people naturally empower other people. It's only disempowered people that are trying to disempower other people, right? If there's somebody who feels their personal power, what are they going to do in a room? They're going to make everybody else feel that way. And when someone comes in and they don't feel that sense of empowerment, what do? They try to find people to hang out with by bringing them down, right? We're built naturally to do unto others what is on the inside of us. And we've been starving ourselves and then wondering why we can't be kinder to other people, like in the subway. Kind of hard thing to do when you feel so irritated, right? See, empowered people do the thing that I think makes life easier for themselves. They make and trust decisions towards their desires. They make and they trust the decisions towards their desires without the need of attention or approval from other people. They're not looking for other people to validate what they're doing. They're just doing it. That's the ease that we're all looking for. How many times do we try to contemplate making a decision for ourselves and we go and ask 10 different people what they would do if we were in our position, right? And what are you gonna get? You're gonna get 10 different answers. Because those people cannot be inside of you. They cannot feel your feelings. And every situation is different because every individual is different. So when you start to understand that you can trust your desire, you would start to make and trust each and every decision that leads you in that direction. I've told you a lot of big examples and big changes that I made, but it started really, really small. It started with my thinking, like my idea that maybe it's okay to actually do something for myself. Maybe it was okay to spend time on myself. I didn't actually start doing that until I started thinking that, but that was a decision to focus on the thought. It was that small in the beginning. One of my next big steps was buying a lip gloss at CVS for myself. Huge impact, little change. Because I had been depriving myself of simple things because I had 3 kids that I needed to take care of. And I didn't realize how much deprivation I was living under. Eventually I moved into a penthouse. It's fine. That was years later. I don't recommend doing that. But you do start to trust, and you start to gain courage, and you start to gain confidence. And I feel like this year has really showed me what it is my purpose was, that thing that was calling me. And I was waiting all year, like, what is it? What is it? How do I express myself? What do I say? Well, I had to live it first, completely, before I could stand here today and express to you that that's what it was. Even the building, the creating of Inspired Empire has been a process in trust, a huge process in trust. And the fact that we're here today is a testament to how much life has my back. And it's really this understanding that Inspired Empire was created to convey, to help people rediscover their life through the lens of their desire. That's it. I believe that if enough people stopped looking at the drama on the outside and went on inside, check in with that desire, that we could have a collective shift in our consciousness, because we would simply be dissolving all of that drama and dysfunction. So, having been through the journey though, alone, long journey in the dark, wanted to make sure that when we were building this experience for Inspired Empire, it would represent something that I may have wanted through the experience to make the process better, and dare I say, more fun. So there's really 3 pillars to the experience that Jen and I have created. And we've said, look, on the way to enlightenment, if you want to call it that, it's got to be fun. We're going to use entertainment as a pathway to enlightenment. Enlightenment, spirituality, personal development, all that stuff is kind of packaged pretty seriously. And I feel like it's kind of hard for the masses to digest. And I wanted to give it a new voice. Most people avoid inner work because it's tough to go inside, like I said. So Inspired Empire promises to take the dirty work out of inner work. It will not be as dark as what I've experienced, because I'm going to take what I've learned and help convey it in a way that can actually strip out most of that. And I want to make this feel kind of normal when you start to shift your life. I felt like I was a fish out of water when I started making changes, even in my mind, when I started thinking differently. And I realized I wasn't thinking the same thoughts as the people around me anymore, and I was starting to make changes in my life, and I felt pretty different, and I felt pretty alone. My thinking was, if enough people gathered together to make the change, we could actually normalize function. We could make it normal to be different, the same way that we've normalized dysfunction. So the thinking of, just think big. Think big about what this is going to be. In fact, that's what the empire part of Inspired Empire is about. It's not the fact that it's a massive company. It's the fact that we wanted to have a massive impact all at once. What Steve Jobs did for the personal computer is really what we want to do for personal development. We want to bring it into everybody's home. And then, just like the internet, where there was a huge connection, we want to make sure that we're connecting people who are doing this journey at the same time, connecting them so they're not doing it alone. So, for Inspired Empire, there'll be 3 main components to this. The first one is going to be a YouTube channel, and this starts sometime in July, and this is where we're going to start to convey some of these philosophies, higher consciousness content, but in a way that you guys can understand it and may even laugh at it. We want to make comedy a piece of this. We want to make it interesting. We want to make it fun. We're also creating what we're calling the Home Community Platform. So this is the place where we want thousands and thousands of people to come together to go through this journey of following their desires together, led by my personal guidance and everything I've learned through my big challenges and big lessons, and I want to be able to share that with everybody who joins this so that we can start to make this collective shift together. We are starting this out, this online community, to be for everybody. Everybody in at the same time. And then eventually what the plan is to create subgroups so that we can have different groups of people connecting on their custom journeys together. So mothers will definitely be one. There will definitely be one for men, because I think men are ready to finally start thinking this way as well. We were thinking about one for teens. We've got many ideas, and we'll see what comes up as it unfolds, because essentially by joining Home, what you're doing is joining our journey of Inspired Empire and unfolding with us. We don't make all the plans, we let them happen. So, how many of you guys have heard of the butterfly effect? Yeah? The idea that a butterfly in one part of the world can flap their wings and make, what, a tsunami on the other side of the world? Something drastic? So, I'll tell you one of my other desires that I followed, which seemed so irrational at the time, but I was just going to do it. So before I really knew what the business was, just knew that I was going to have big impact. Didn't have a business plan, didn't have any idea of revenues, also had my rent to pay. I knew that I wanted Inspired Empire to contribute to our social consciousness on a really big level, aside from helping people in their journeys. So I was guided to 3 different organizations to commit profits of this company. I felt like that's something that I really wanted to do. That was part of the reason that Jen joined the venture in the first place, was because I said, I've committed profits to 3 organizations, 50% in fact. And that decision made me feel like me. I didn't have any logical understanding of how this was going to happen, but I knew it was going to happen because I felt like $1 million when I decided that that's what I was going to do. And what we really want Inspired Empire to do is kind of have that butterfly effect, but for everybody who joins it. Want you to feel that the minute that you start working on yourself, there are changes that happen around you that you may not even be consciously aware of. But we also want to make sure that when you invest in yourself through Inspired Empire, that those changes you can see immediately by knowing that half of your membership, half of the profits from the membership actually goes to these organizations. And at the time, because I was starting with mothers, I was guided to 3 organizations that were doing such great work with elevating other people's lives already. Angel House, which is an organization that builds shelters, orphanages, in India, but it was started by a woman here in the States who felt compelled to follow her desire and help these children. The other one is the Shanti Bhavan children's project. You can check out Daughters of Destiny on Netflix to find out more about these guys. But what they're basically doing is it's such an empowering organization where they take one child out of families living in poverty and they educate them completely all the way up until university and then empower that child to go back and help their family. WIN, Women in Need, that's a New York City-based organization for women and children who are homeless, and they give them temporary housing and help them find a path to permanent housing. So and they give them empowerment workshops, and they do a great job with mentoring these women. And I've done some workshops of my own with them as well, and I've seen them, the way that they engage, and it's amazing. So these are the first organizations that we've committed to, and there will be many, many more, because I expect us to be able to deliver to many organizations. And just feeling this idea that committed to the charities first, but now we actually have a business, and I can say what the business is, and we're launching the business. Well, now it's all come full circle, which is fantastic. And I guess what I want to say is, I want this thing to be big because I know courage is contagious. I know how important it is for us to feed off of each other's energy. And that's why thinking that this many people would start their own journeys, that has the power to dissolve the social divide. That the thing that we're all looking for, that solution, I feel it starts with many, many people working on their inner divide. Because as this chaos builds in our society, we really have three choices. You know, the chaos is happening, the change is waiting. We can change nothing and prolong the struggle. We can do nothing and complain that no one else is doing anything either, and stay in a disempowered state. Or we can do the only thing that actually works, which is work on yourself and experience the change that is waiting for you a lot faster. Now, I think we all have heard the quote from a very wise person who has walked this earth, who said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." One of my favorite quotes from Gandhi himself. Love him, not just because I'm Indian, although I feel I should love him because I'm Indian. Be the change you wish to see in this world. For a long time, that was just a quote that I had read, and then I started to embody it. And then I embodied it so much that I want to share that with you guys. Speaking of being Indian, you guys saw in the video, the second video, the music to that experience of the awakening was something called the Gayatri Mantra. It's an ancient Hindu mantra. It's about 2,500 years old. How this song came into my life and into the company is something that I will explain to you in one of the YouTube episodes. But I want to make it clear that this isn't about religion or ethnicity. This is a mantra that has such a powerful intent from its soothing sounds and the flowing rhythms. What it really is a universal awakening to the authenticity, the wisdom, and the highest intellect within each of us. And it's become the company manifesto. The video that you experienced earlier, the version of that mantra was inspired by Deva Premal, but the vocals were by a beautiful woman named Nadia Christine Duggan. Nadia is here tonight with our very own Om Choir to sing it for you live, and I'm very excited about that. This version of the mantra is inspired by the Agape International Spiritual Center, of which Nadia is a part of as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nadia and the Om Choir.
Savitur laenia Bargo devasya dimai
That is the feeling of Inspired Empire. That is really what we want everyone to feel like when they are joining us on the journey. I want to thank you so much. I have so much more to say. There's so much more to say, and we're out of time. But here's the thing. I'm going to start putting daily messages on inspiredempire.com. That's where you need to go. And we also have an Instagram account now. We do. Instagram. What is our... Empire official. Oh, my babies. And I want to thank you guys. I want to thank my business partner. This is my babies. And my sister from another month, Mr. Jen. Come on over here. That's Jen. And I want to thank James Moses Black, our producer and director for tonight, who made this magic happen. I want to thank the rest of the team who has made tonight happen and whoever else is helping Inspired Empire happen. We are going to have the Community of Home up and running for July 2nd, but the website goes live tonight or tomorrow, so check it out. I'll give you all the information that you're going to need to start following us and figure out how the rest of the journey unfolds. This is just the beginning of Inspired Empire and the beginning of your life starting through your desires. Thank you, guys. Thank you to the streamers. Thank you. I want to say hello to my dad if he's watching.